Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wow Night. And for today, I've been tasked to share God's message for all of you. And when I was praying about this, the Lord impressed upon my heart this word. And the word is remembrance or remembering. And and that's why I entitled our message, The Power of Remembrance. And it seems so, it's not your usual power title that we use in Windwatch, but nevertheless, this is what God impressed in my heart. And as I prepared, I started doing the message and listening to what God was impressing in my heart. Then I realized that there is indeed power in remembering, or there is power in remembrance. And our passage for tonight is taken from Joshua chapter 4, verses 19 to 24. And it reads, "On the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones that they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, 'In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea, when he had dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, so that you might always fear the Lord your God.'" And just to give you a background on this passage, after 40 long years of wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites are now in Canaan. They had just crossed over the Jordan River. They were now in Canaan. And in crossing over, the Israelites who are now led by Joshua, God had an instruction for them. And God said, when you cross over, you get 12 men, one man from each tribe of Israel, and where the Ark of the Covenant was, where the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant was, they were in the middle of the river at the time, and God had parted the Jordan River so that the Israelites would be able to cross over. And God said, let each man pick up or carry a stone on his shoulder and carry it outside the Jordan River. And Joshua would stack up these stones, and it would serve as a memorial. That's why we call it the memorial stones. It would serve as a reminder to the Israelites as to what God had done for them. And it's so interesting because in this point of the history of Israel, they were embarking on a new chapter of their lives. And this chapter, of course, we know that God was writing. And again, these memorial stones would serve as a reminder of who God is and what He had done for them. And in the same way, as Christians, there is so much power when we choose to remember who God is. And in this time of pandemic, I really believe that it is so important that while we are facing difficulties, while we are facing new challenges that no one else in this world can boast that he has encountered, we are able to remember and look back as to who God is and what He has done in our lives. And it reminds us that in spite of this pandemic, we have a loving God who is always in control over everything. We have a loving God who is control over everything. In this time of pandemic, we can thrive when we choose to remember and remain focused on our God. And I would just like to share to you the principles that God impressed in my heart as I was preparing for this message. The first principle is that in the midst of difficulty and hardship, we remember God's past work. I say it again. In the midst of difficulty and hardship, we remember God's past work. In the study Bible that I have here at home, it says that stone monuments in the Bible usually outlive the people who erect them. They keep memories alive long after the original players who could tell the stories have left the scene. Stone monuments would be there to remind the people of God's faithfulness. And in our passage, the memorial stones would serve as an encouragement to the Israelites as they begin to embark on the conquest of Canaan. In the same way, looking back and remembering God's track record in our lives, the miracles, the signs and wonders, the breakthroughs, the answered prayers, it reminds us that we have a God who continuously and tirelessly works for our children, for His children. And for me and Cookie, that is what really encourages us in this time of pandemic. We have to admit, that there are times that there would be some anxiety, there would be some fear. In my line of work, I don't know what will happen or what will be the new normal. And I've been talking to a lot of lawyers, and especially in my practice of or field of specialization of litigation, the legal profession is really like having difficulty adapting right now in the rules and the regulations that are being issued now. They don't even know if that can be if that will really work or not. And whenever you face these things, how your work will be affected, how your clients will be affected, how our businesses will be affected, there will be times that there will be anxiety that would creep in. There would be doubts that would creep in. There would be fear that would creep in. But I just praise God because it is also in these times that God reminds me, Cookie, and our whole family that He is faithful. That when we look at how God has moved in our lives, we are assured that He will not let us down. In our family, that a few years ago, Cookie had a sickness which was life-threatening. And she was already at that, based on what the doctors have told us, she was already at that, almost near that point of no return. That bacteria, that flesh and bone eating bacteria would have taken her life. But in that time, the Lord really promised us that He would pull through, that He would heal Cookie, and that He would use this situation as a testimony of His power. He would show it. And aside from that, God has really moved in our lives in so many ways, whether it be in provision, whether it be in career, whether it be in our family life. God has time and time again proven that He is working tirelessly for us, that He will not leave us, that He will never abandon us. And it is in these times when anxiety creeps in, God reminds us. And that is amazing because we are always, pag biglang pumasok na yung discouragement, bam, the Lord will just put that reminder in our minds that He is still in control. That in this time na naghirap kami, He was in control. That He pulled through for us. If God brought you through those hardships and problems, He will definitely pull you through in the next one in accordance to His plans and to His will in your life. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that awesome? And this brings me also to the next point. In the midst of difficulty and hardship, we also remember God's power. And I would just really like to emphasize that part of the verse. What do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed the river. until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. Yes, we all know that God is powerful. We always say that. And ito nga yun, in these memorial stones, primarily was reminding the Israelites of how powerful he was, of how powerful he was. And that's not really wrong. But to me, what's even more amazing is the way, yes, God is powerful. He is all powerful. But what is even more amazing is the manner by which God exercises that power. I will repeat that again. What is amazing and unbelievable is the way and manner by which God exercises his power. Because in exercising, the way he exercises his power reveals his true character. The way he exercises that power reveals his true power. I really want to emphasize that. Here we have a God who created the whole universe. From yung details ng every little thing, pinlano niya yun. But yet, this God who created everything, this all big, powerful God who created everything, still wants to have a relationship with you and me. He loves us that much, no, and he just desires, no, to have fellowship with his creation, no, and that is what is really amazing. God's power and the way he uses it just reveals his real character. We know that statement, no, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and we have seen it, no, in so many situations, whether it be with our family, with our friends, no, or in government, no, when people are given some sort of power, pag talagang tumatagal yan, it will tend to corrupt people, no, but you have here a God who is so powerful. He could just wipe us out anytime if he decided to, because he may be frustrated with us, but he does not give up on us. And he lavishes us with this unconditional love. That is who our God is. And when you remember that, you will just be amazed and you will be encouraged. And that will really change your mindset. If you are discouraged, if you are afraid, if you are anxious, remember that the God who created the universe loves you and wants to have a relationship with you. And this brings me to my last point, which is the promise of this message. If we, in the midst of difficulty and hardship, when we remember God's past work, we remember God's power, and the promise is we remember God's promises. We remember God's promises. Crossing the Jordan River did not mean a vacation for the Israelites. We know that, no, in the Bible, when they came to that land flowing with milk and honey na sinabi ng Panginoon, it was a new chapter. And they were not there to have a vacation. They were there to conquer. It was a conquest for them. And they had to battle the people who were there. And of course, like in any war, in any battle or battles, no, there will be a lot of hardship, a lot of difficulty. Now, when you read it, it's just parang simple lang. But if you just imagine yourself being there, no, there will be a lot of battles and struggles and difficulties. And this is also reflected subsequently in the different books of the Old Testament. But in the end, God's promise to Abraham years before was eventually fulfilled in accordance to his plan. God led the Israelites. God never left the Israelites. He was there with them all throughout. He was instructing them on what to do. And in remembering God's character and track record in our lives, it also strongly reminds us that the pain, difficulties, and hardships are only temporary, and that victory and breakthrough are always in the end. God's promises in His Word and those which have revealed to us will come to fruition. So what are you going through right now? No, of course we have this pandemic. It is so difficult. But Yun na nga what God is promising you is that hindi tayo magtatapos dyan. You will not end in loss. You will not end up na talunan. No, what God promises us is a life of breakthrough and victory. In this time of pandemic, let us remember who God is, what He's done, and what He will continue to do for us. The Christian life, while not immune from challenges and struggles, is always a life of amazing miracles in the fulfillment of God's promises. So let us remember who God is, what He has done, and I assure you that you and I, with His help, we will be able to break through. Remember that God loves you and He just wants to work in your life. So that's my message for today, and I hope you were blessed. So just stay safe, and we will continue to pray with and for each other, and just spend time with the Lord in this time. God bless you.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונקה. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace.